welcome back! We're here for the myHogwarts.com's Craft Guild's Learn to Crochet series. This is lesson 2. In lesson 1 we learned about materials, what kind of yarn we suggest, what kind of hook we suggest, and so we're going to be using here this acrylic worsted weight. This might be a Red Heart Super Saver, I could be wrong, but it's just a generic worsted weight acrylic yarn, and it's in this ball. You can find a ball winder, but it usually comes in a skein. Either way, it doesn't matter, but we're just going to be pulling the yarn right out of the ball like this. And we're also using this Boy G-size hook. There we go. And this is a pretty standard size. It's a bit on the smaller end, but for what the range of hooks that you can use for the worsted weight yarn. So, very first thing you need to know to get started is the slip knot. It's a very simple little knot. It can look complicated at first, but it looks like this. That's it. And basically the benefit of this knot is it gives you a little loop that can be resized and also pulls right out. You actually are not putting the end through the loop, and so it just is tied in the middle of the yarn, and that's what we start with. So in order to make your slip knot, give yourself a little bit of a tail. It doesn't have to be super long, but you don't have to skimp. Don't worry about wasting this amount of yarn. It's not that big a deal in the scheme of things. So make a loop like this. I pinched that loop with my thumb here, and what you're going to want to do is pull this yarn into a loop through that, okay? So you can actually pull it through with your finger, and don't pull it through all the way because that would make an overhand knot, which is just a standard overhand knot. So that's what we're doing. We're just not pulling the tail all the way through. And then just go ahead and grab both ends here and just pull that knot nice and tight. Doesn't have to be like super tight. And then you've got here this resizable loop. So that's your overhand knot. I'll show you how I do it nice and slow. Make the loop, pinch it, pull your loop through, and you've got an overhand knot. I'm sorry, excuse me, a slip knot. So now that we have the slip knot, very first loop, right? We're going to insert our hook. So the way I hold my hook is like a knife, and then I hold the loose yarn down here, and then I usually wrap the yarn around my finger. This is the working end of the yarn that we're going to be using to make more, and then down here is where the work is, right? So I hold it down here with my fingers, and I have the working yarn up over my finger here. So it's kind of pinched between my fingers, and that controls the tension. So as it works through, I kind of keep my fingers pinching the yarn so that it doesn't pull a super huge loop each time. Some people like to wrap around multiple fingers. I just find that a single wrap works well for me, but experiment to find out what's comfortable for you. And remember how I said in lesson 1 that crochet is just pulling loops through loops. So we're going to use this hook, and we're going to pull a loop through our loop. So just grab your hook, or so grab yarn like this, and pull it through the loop. This is called a yarn over, when you put the yarn over your hook like that, and you're just creating a loop that you pull through the loop and create a stitch. So this is called the chain stitch because, as you see, we're forming a chain. Nice chain, and that's how we get started with any crochet project. So you'll see I have 5 stitches here, and each one has a little V on the front, and on the back there's a little bump. So that's how you can tell the front from the back. As we go through this lesson, I'm just going to be working up a sampler just to show all the different stitches in one place. So if you're going to follow along, let's go ahead and chain 19 stitches. So that's going to be 18 stitches across plus 1, and we'll talk about that plus 1 in our next lesson when we get started on the single crochet. But for now, let's just practice your chain stitch, get it nice and even. You just want each stitch basically to be the same size. And they don't have to be super tight, because if you make them too tight, it'll be difficult to work in them later. Alright, these little wormies were my gateway drug into crochet. When you see a chain stitch in a pattern, it'll be abbreviated CH for chain. There we go, that's my 19 stitches. So I'm just gonna, when I stop, I tend to pull the loop out a little bit, just so that it doesn't fall out. But you don't really have to worry about your stitches falling apart when you take your hook out, because it's just this one loop you have to worry about. I just want to briefly go over the way you hold your hook. As you'll notice, I kind of hold mine like a knife, I guess. Some people hold theirs like a pencil, and you can do that too. That way you, I'll show you. You scoop up the same way and pull it through this way. As you can see, I'm not very good at this. I never learned to crochet like a pencil, and so I'm not going to be able to show you how that works too well, but I can imagine that it might cause a little bit less wrist strain, so I would suggest just trying it both ways, like a knife like this, or like a pencil like this. And whichever way works for you, do it that way. The stitches are formed exactly the same way. It's just really a matter of preference. Alright, so we're going to leave off there for now, and we will see you next week when we learn the single crochet.